The long road home. It had been a perfect vacation. Sun-drenched beaches, endless laughter, and the warm embrace of family. Everything was just as it should be. For the Andersons, a family of four, this getaway was a much-needed break from their hectic, city-bound lives. Jack and Laura, both in their late 30s, sat in the front seats of their reliable old sedan. Their two children, Olivia and Ethan, occupied the back, playing games on their tablets. They were on their way back home, the vacation now a pleasant memory. The road was long, but it wasn't unfamiliar. The trip back from the coastal resort to their suburban home usually took about 5 hours. They had made the journey dozens of times before, but something about this trip felt off. The sun, once high in the sky, seemed to be setting earlier than usual, casting an orange glow on the winding road ahead. The first sign that something was wrong came when they reached a stretch of road they didn't recognize. It was a straight, narrow path lined with dense trees, almost like a forgotten trail. Jack, who had been driving for years, was sure they had never taken this route before. But the GPS showed no error. It was as if the road had always been there, waiting for them. "Are we on the right way?" Laura asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "I think so," Jack replied, his brows furrowing as he adjusted the rearview mirror. "It's showing the same road. I guess this is a shortcut." But as the minutes stretched into hours, it became clear that this shortcut was anything but normal. Part 1. The Stretched Hours. The further they went, the more unsettling the journey became. The trees that flanked the road appeared taller, their branches more twisted, blocking out the light. The road seemed endless, and the soft hum of the car's engine became a constant companion, but one that felt increasingly distant, as if the car itself was becoming detached from reality. Jack tried to focus on the road, but his thoughts kept drifting. His hands gripped the wheel tighter, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. "Laura, do you remember passing that small gas station a while back?" Jack asked, his voice trembling slightly. Laura looked out the window, confused. "No, but I thought we passed a diner maybe 30 minutes ago." "Exactly," Jack said, his tone growing more frantic. "But we've been on this road for hours, and there hasn't been a single sign of life. No towns, no rest stops, nothing." Laura glanced at her phone. There was no service. The GPS was still functioning, but it had been showing the same stretch of road over and over. "I don't like this, Jack," she said quietly. But before Jack could respond, a sharp gasp came from the back seat. Olivia had her eyes wide open, her face pale. "Mom, Dad." "I don't feel good," Olivia said, her voice small and weak. "Olivia, what's wrong?" Laura turned around, her concern growing as she saw her daughter's flushed cheeks and the beads of sweat forming on her forehead. Olivia didn't respond, but instead pressed her hand to her chest, looking almost older. Jack could feel his heart race. Something wasn't right with her. Then, before they could even process what was happening, a strange sensation crept over them. A feeling of heaviness settled in their bodies. It was as though time itself was stretching and compressing in waves. The once comfortable hum of the car turned into an unsettling hum, vibrating their very bones. The stretching years. It started slowly. At first, it was just a slight ache in Jack's back, as if he had been sitting for too long. Then his hands, his once strong, capable hands, felt stiff. His neck, too, ached. He glanced at Laura, her normally smooth skin now showing faint lines, her hair somehow losing its shine. "What's happening?" he whispered, more to himself than to her. But Laura, too, seemed to have aged before his very eyes. Her eyes, once sharp and clear, now looked tired and worn. Olivia groaned from the back seat. I don't feel good." Her voice was deeper now, rougher. When Jack turned around, he saw that she no longer looked like a 10-year-old girl. She looked older. Her once smooth face was marred by the faintest wrinkles, and her hair, too, had started to gray. Ethan, who had been quiet for most of the ride, now seemed pale as well, his small body seemingly shrinking into his seat. "What's happening to us?" Laura gasped. "Why are we aging?" Jack couldn't answer. He wasn't sure he could even believe what was happening. He wasn't sure what to believe at all anymore. He tried to focus on the road, but it felt like the distance ahead was growing longer, as though the road was stretching out before them in a never-ending loop. "I'm going to try to stop at the next town," Jack said, determination creeping into his voice. "There's got to be someone, something." But the road didn't end. It twisted and turned, yet there were no signs, no markers. It was just an endless path in all directions. As the minutes turned to hours, the family felt it, an undeniable shift. Each of them seemed to age, if only by a year or two with each passing moment. Jack's hands now looked old, wrinkled and spotted, and his hair was graying at the temples. Laura's once beautiful face had transformed into the face of a woman in her late 40s. She didn't speak now, only stared ahead, her expression empty and distant. Olivia's voice was deep now, her young body bending in strange ways. She couldn't move as fluidly as before, her joints stiff and creaking as though she had lived an entire lifetime in the span of a few hours. "I can't stand this," Ethan whispered, his voice now a boy's but fragile. He tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Jack slammed his hand against the steering wheel in frustration, feeling a deep, gnawing terror. "What is this? Why are we here?" But the road showed no mercy. It continued, stretching forward, offering no hope. It was as though they were trapped in a cruel, cyclical nightmare, a journey with no destination, no exit. Part 3. The Final Turn. The next few hours became a blur of confusion, pain, and growing panic. Time seemed to move at a different speed, spinning out of control. For every minute that passed, they seemed to age a decade. Jack's back had become hunched, his fingers gnarled and stiff. He could no longer hold the steering wheel properly. Laura, too, had begun to falter, her face now deep in age and sorrow. "I don't know if we can keep going, Jack," she whispered through tears. "I'm so tired." Olivia, now looking like a woman in her 30s, sat silently in the back, her once lively eyes filled with resignation. "It's no use," she said softly, her voice now steady and deep. "We're stuck." The car slowed, its engine sputtering, as if it too was losing its strength. In the distance, Jack thought he saw something, an outline of a building, a sign of life. Could it be real? He slammed his foot down on the accelerator, but as they reached what they thought was an end, the building turned out to be a mirage. The road kept stretching on, endless and eternal. And then, without warning, everything stopped. The car came to a halt, its engine silent. The family, exhausted and broken, sat in the dead stillness of the night. They no longer felt the passage of time. They no longer cared. The road, endless and twisting, had claimed them. The Andersons had gone home. But home was no longer a place.